Hi, welcome back to Everyday Behavior with Dr. Marianne. This is the fifth video in our series this month on motivation, establishing operations, and how that all links in together with our basic physiological needs or trauma. And so when we're talking about influences of motivation, we also want to consider the terms of satiation and deprivation. So deprivation is any time that access to something is restricted, and deprivation works to increase our motivation. Now, we're not talking about deprivation as far as intentionally restricting something. Sometimes we will intentionally restrict something. So I may intentionally restrict sweets so that they are more motivating as part of a behavior intervention plan. I may intentionally restrict access to a video game or a preferred activity so that the motivation to earn that preferred activity increases. However, sometimes in some situations where those basic needs aren't met, whether that's safety, food, or sleep, children are operating in a state of deprivation, which increases their motivation to access things like food, sleep, safety. And so they may engage in behaviors that seem counterintuitive in order to access these basic needs. And so when you have a child that is in a state of deprivation, you want to provide that non-contingent access to things like sleep or rest, non-contingent access to warmth or clothing that provides warmth. So maybe that's a coat or shoes or adequate clothing. You may want to provide non-contingent access to things like food or water in the school environment or in another environment so that these basic needs are met, not as part of the behavior plan, but how can we look at what items are in a state of deprivation. So again, there are times where you will intentionally use satiation and deprivation to adjust motivation with things that are privileges. So you look at your rights and your privileges. All individuals have the right to safety. All individuals have the right to warmth and shelter and food and adequate nutrition and health. That is a basic right that in the United States that we have or should have. And so those are things that you don't intentionally deprive a child of. However, things that are privileges, those are things that you can look at creating a state of deprivation on in order to increase motivation. So privileges are things like access to video games or computer games, access to highly preferred toys, access to sweets or additional snacks or less healthy snacks like chips or popcorn, things that have little nutritional value. Those can be used as providing as deprivation and reinforcement. And so if you have a child who has limited access to some of those basic needs, how can you provide that non-contingent access? For students who have adequate needs met, how can you utilize that satiation and deprivation to increase motivation in other areas? So satiation is decreasing motivation. So satiation works as an abolishing operation. And so an abolishing operation, again, decreases the motivation to engage in something. So you may also use things like electronics, candy, or some other access to maybe sensory stimulation or sensory input in order to decrease the student's motivation to engage in those behaviors in order to access that. But you're continually looking at how can we alter satiation and deprivation to reduce a student's motivation to engage in a specific behavior in order to access some need that they may be having. I hope this kind of explains how satiation and deprivation influences behavior kind of in that framework of motivating operations and trauma or a lack of adequate resources due to abuse, neglect, or other environmental variables. Thank you so much for watching. You can find an additional visual or resource to accompany this video on our Facebook page at Facebook or at Everyday Behavior with Dr. Marianne. I encourage you to like or follow us on Facebook for additional resources as they are released. I also encourage you to click the red subscribe button just below to receive notifications when additional videos are released. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.